Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today here live in Adorama store. And today I will be showing some creative fine art editing workflow, and I will be breaking down this image from start to finish, how I edit it. All right, so I guess should we start? Hello everybody in the chat. Feel free to ask any question and I'll try my best to answer them. Okay. Okay, so I photographed this image a couple of years ago in a studio, and the idea was because I really like this backdrop with all the paint splatters in the back, and I thought it would be cool to play around this theme of painting and paint. So I created this huge paint tube out of the craft paper, and I just got some giant brushes, and I got my model. And I specifically chose a yellow dress for her because I wanted to create this complementary color scheme of blue and yellow, and just to have a nice color scheme in general. Okay, so that was like a little story behind this image. And so here's my raw file. And I'm going to start by editing it in Lightroom. I always shoot in RAW, and I highly recommend everybody doing so because RAW format is uncompressed compared to JPEG, and it stores much more information, and it's more flexible. It gives you much more opportunities to fix any issues that might have occurred on the set. You know, things like fixing exposure, white balance, etc. So it's just a good thing, and I highly recommend everybody just shooting in RAW. And I always start with raw processing of my raw files, and I do my raw processing in Lightroom. Just my personal preference, I've been doing it for years. So here's my raw image, and I'm just going to drag and drop it and open it in Lightroom. I have already opened my Lightroom in library mode, and here's my image browser. So I just do this. I take, drag, and drop it into Lightroom to open it. And here's my window menu, and it asks me if I want to, which images I want to import, so I can check, more images or just go with this one, and I click import. Give me 1 second. I think my mouse have died. Need to change the battery. Sorry, guys. Oh, there you go. So okay. So here's the image imported in Lightroom, and then I just go to Develop module here on top of this menu to edit. And you can customize your Lightroom space however you want. You can collapse these menus. You can open them if you need to. If you have like little space on your screen, you can collapse them like that. Are we good? Yes. Okay. And I always start, so here are my menus, my editing menus, and I always start with basic menu. And here I'm going to tweak the temperature to make the image cooler, just because, I like blue. Hold on, I have like my cheat sheets here. There you go. That's probably too cool. So something like this. And I always start with also tweaking my exposure, and I like to expand my dynamic range by tweaking highlights and shadows. So I usually reduce my highlights like this and expand my shadows, move them to the right to expand my dynamic range. And for this one, I want to tone down whites a little bit to make it less bright. So here, that's it for now in the basic menu, and I move forward to tone curve. And in the tone curve, I usually create this little S-shaped curve for a little bit of contrast. And what I usually like to do is just, again, my personal preference, my personal style of editing. I pull up the black point and pull down white point. Oops, Control Z. Hey, white point. I can't grab the white point. What's going on? Oh, there you go. There you go. So I do this for this faded, muted effect. If we turn on and off, you can see that it's slightly faded. And that's pretty much it, what I usually do in the tone curve. And then I move to HSL. Need to choose the mixer. And here I do most of my color grading and color correction. And as I mentioned before, I aim towards this blue and yellow color scheme, but more specifically, I aim towards cyan, teal blue, towards like orangey yellow color tone. So here what I do, I move the hue of yellow to the left to make it warmer, slightly desaturate it because I prefer less saturated and more muted colors on my images. Slightly tweak the orange.
You got a question?
Got a question? Yep.
So Michael in the chat's asking, how does the tone curve differ from adjusting the highlight and shadows on the sliders?
You can definitely use either that or that. You can, in terms of like S-shaped curve, you can of course choose contrast, for example. That's totally up to you. I just prefer, and I feel like I have more flexibility using curves, especially when pulling up black points and pulling down white points, creating that muted effect. I think that's only possible in curved curves. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's proceed. So I tweaked yellow, I tweaked orange tiny bit, and then I go to green. And on this image, I don't have any green, and I also don't need any green. So just in case I have some, like color shifts, I desaturate it almost completely like this, and move it all the way to the right to make, if there's any green on my image, make it more teal and unify my colors. Moving greens towards teal and moving like any like purplish blues tones again towards teal, if that makes sense. And then in aqua, I do the same thing. I move it slightly to the right and blue to the left to make it less like royal blue and more like teal blue. And slightly darken it for more saturated color. All right, let's see the before and after. Let me collapse this so you can see the image better. Okay, very, very subtle slight change. Then I move to color grading, and color grading is more over like color toning on top of what you've already done. And again, just a personal preference, I prefer toning my highlights towards cyan blue color. Saturation like this. And to make it a little bit warmer, I prefer toning my shadows into warm orange, something like this. And then I move the balance to get more of that cyan color spread all over the image. So if I click before and after, you can see how I toned it in more cool tone blue color. Okay, let's move on. I don't usually take detail unless there's really like blurry image, but usually my sharpness is fine. And like I don't really have that much noise, so I don't do denoise either, unless there's like really like terrible noise on my image. Again, lens correction is totally fine. I don't need to transform anything, no like special effects. I move straight towards calibration. And here in calibration, again, I like to play a little bit with colors and to unify them even more. And let me show you, there's no like rule in working in calibration. I just play around the colors and see, Yes.
So Garcia's asking, do you shoot knowing what colors you will edit and change?
Usually I do. Like I said, it's just my personal preference and style, making everything like cool tone blue. But like I mentioned before in the beginning, that I specifically chose the dress for my model yellow because I knew that my paint tube is going to be blue. It's going to have this blue like color tag on top, and I also used blue body paint because it's supposed, the blue body paint is supposed to come out of this paint tube, and you have it a little bit on the brush, and also like she's all covered, like her arms are covered with paint. So yes, I specifically chose yellow dress for that, and I usually plan ahead my photo shoots, and I plan ahead what colors are going to be on set, what colors are going to be my outfit and props and all those things. Okay. Okay, let's move to calibration. And here I play with channels like this. Especially the blue channel works interesting because it moves like blue tones towards teal and cyan color, and all the reds and warms. It's hard to explain, but if you play around, you get the idea. Let me show you just the before and after, what I mean. And I feel like calibration helps me. It works similar to saturation, but I feel like there's a slight difference in like, it just makes the colors pop and vibrant. So if I click before and after, you see how the colors changed and shifted. I'm pretty sure you can do that in the HSL menu, but it's just like, I don't know, I just like playing around with camera calibration and see like where it takes me when I like move the sliders left and right. But that's what you can get with camera calibration, okay? Now I can see that my image is slightly too magenta for my taste. I mean, there's nothing wrong with white balance right now, but just for my taste, I feel like it's slightly too magenta. So I move the tint slightly left, okay? Like that. All right, and that's pretty much it for Lightroom edits and Lightroom raw processing. So now I'm going to just export my image. So I do right-click on the image for the menu. I'm sorry? Yes, of course, yes. Thank you, that's a good point. Let's see the before and after of the whole edits in Lightroom. And to do that, just hit the, how do you call it? The slash button, slash right, on your keypad, before and after. All right, good. So let's export, right-click, and I go to export, export with 3 dots. And here you can change the folder you want to export to. You can like put it in a specific folder, name it however you want. You choose your file format. Usually I export in TIFF, again, to get that image quality as big as possible. But for the sake of this tutorial, to say, you know, because TIFFs are usually big files and they take a lot of computer resources. But for now, for this demonstration, just to save, you know, some time and computer power, so it takes less time to process, I'm going to export in JPEG. But usually I do it in TIFF like this. I recommend do it in Adobe RGB color space, and I recommend do it in 16-bit. Again, if your computer is powerful enough, it allows you to work in 16-bit, and you have enough space to do that, because again, 16-bit files tend to be much bigger and heavier. But again, for today's purpose, I'm going to select JPEG, highest quality possible, and just do sRGB. Okay, and I just click export. I'm going to put it in a subfolder named JPEG, and that's pretty much it. Just make sure that it's not resized to any like size except for the original size, and I just click export. And it's just going to take a few moments right there. Sure.
Do you export in TIFF also for Instagram and social media? Or?
No, I only export in TIFF when I move to Photoshop next, and I edit TIFF in Photoshop, and when I'm completely done for social media, my website, for anything that goes online, I then save it for web in JPEG, and I also make sure that it's exported in sRGB color space. And it's important because our online space only supports sRGB color space. Because if you export it in Adobe RGB, your colors are going to shift. They're going to be more muted, okay? All right, so here's my subfolder JPEG, and here is my JPEG. And then I move on to Photoshop. So again, I have already Photoshop opened. Here it is. And I just take my file, drag, and drop it in Photoshop, like that. Of course, you can go to File, Open, however you're comfortable and used to working in Photoshop. Takes a few moments. That's what I meant, that I'd rather export in JPEG today for, like, you know, sake of time, and because it's not the most powerful laptop. But if you have a strong, like, powerful computer at home, you should definitely export in TIFF. I mean, not necessarily, but just highly recommend. All right, let me close the Lightroom for now. Here's my file opened in Photoshop. And I'm going to start with cropping this image to square format because all my work is square. Again, my personal preference, no specific reason why I do it, just what I've been doing for years. And to do that, I'm going to take Crop Tool. Here in the pop-up menu, I'm going to select one by one, square, and just reposition it a little bit. And when doing cropping, I highly recommend uncheck the delete cropped pixels box because we want our editing to be as non-destructive as possible. We don't want to crop any pixels just in case I change my mind and I want to reposition my image a little bit later. I want to make sure I have those extra pixels just in case. So that's why I recommend to uncheck this box. And I click OK. And I'm going to move on to editing, to like retouching a little bit. And the first thing that I usually do is I do some shaping in liquify filter. And to do that, I'm going to create a copy of this layer by hitting Ctrl-J. Again, for non-destructive editing, I always highly recommend doing layer copy before doing any edits. So just Control or Command on Mac, Ctrl-J to do layer copy, sorry. And then I go to Filter, Liquify, to do a little bit of shaping. Things like fixing her hair a little bit like that. Slightly fixing the wrinkles on her dress, anything that sticks out. Fixing the shape of the tube a little bit because, you know, she squeezed it a little bit when she was holding, so I really want it to be like straight. So that's why I'm pulling this down slightly. And I'm using forward warp tool. So I just basically press and pull the pixels and do any shape I want. Nothing crazy, just little fixes like that. Let's zoom in. Okay. Slightly fixing their flyaways. This hair that is sticking out on top of her head, I can actually take the pucker tool for that, this one, and just squeeze it in like that. And then again, take the forward warp tool, slightly pull it, and to make hair a little bit less messy. All right, I think looks good. So let me fix this a little bit. So I'm going to click OK. And let's see the before and after. Before and after. Let me zoom in. So very subtle changes, nothing crazy. And then yes?
You see like a line. Can you get rid of that line there?
Yes, I'm moving towards that. So first, I always do liquifying and shaping, and on top of that, I'm going to proceed with retouching, and I always do that like separately on separate layers because liquify moves pixels, and I want to make sure if I do retouching on top of that, I want to be able to brush back and erase anything that I do. So that's why I always do liquify and retouch on two separate layers. And I'm going again to make a layer copy, Control-J. So let's name this layer liquify, and this one is going to be retouch. Okay? And again, nothing crazy here. She's already beautiful. She doesn't need a lot of retouching, but just some minor cleaning up, minor tweaks. And to do that, I'm going to use a combination of different healing brushes. So we have spot healing brush. My used to be my favorite tool. Now my favorite tool is remove tool. So spot healing brush is my second favorite tool. But I also use a healing brush, like regular healing brush still as well. But let's try the new remove tool. By the way, if you haven't updated your Photoshop yet, highly recommend doing that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which camera and what lens did you use for this photo?
So I shot it, oh my God, I forgot. I think it was Nikon Z7 with a 50mm 1.8 lens, I think, because this is like my go-to. I don't have that many lenses. I only have two lenses. I have 50mm and 85. That's it. Yeah, because this was in studio in like a tight space, so I used 50mm. All right, I think for this vein, I'm going to use regular healing brush. So I hit Alt key to select my source and just remove it like that. For this line, I'm going to choose remove tool. So remove tool works similar to spot healing brush. You just paint over the area you want to remove, and Photoshop automatically analyzes it for you and covers it with like new pixels generated. But the difference between spot healing brush and remove tool is that spot healing brush uses the surroundings of the image, and remove tool uses the AI technology to analyze the whole image and like remove things, cover them up. Yeah, so things like that, minor things. Some wrinkles on the dress. She doesn't have any like blemishes, nothing crazy. Maybe just a few tiny spots like that. And I use spot healing brush for that because I feel like, well, remove tool usually takes a lot of time to process. And for little tiny things like flyaway hair and like weird dots on the face, I feel like spot healing brush works better because it works faster. And I usually use spot healing brush in content aware mode, here on top in the tool menu. And I'm going to remove a few flyaway hairs like that. I'm not going to go crazy here and do all of them because it's going to take quite some time. Usually, I take my time at home and spend maybe like 30 minutes on doing just retouching. But today, of course, we don't have that much time, so I'm just going to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So I just paint over these little tiny hairs. And I'm using my pen tablet for that because honestly, I don't know how like I would be able to do it otherwise with the mouse or even like a trackpad. I don't know. It's very, like I can't do anything without my pen tablet. I don't know how people do it without it.
It's all I know, Anya. It's all I know.
All right. So I hope you get the idea. Let's see the before and after. So just remove these little tiny hairs. Yeah, she doesn't have any blemishes, nothing like that. Let's fix this messy hair a little bit. Yes.
Kevin's asking, how long does it take on average to edit photo like this from start to finish?
It really depends, but I would say on average 4 hours, 5 hours. Yeah, but it really depends on the image. Like this is more simple, like this one is less complicated than others. So maybe like 3 hours, I don't know. Okay, so I've created a new empty layer, this little icon here. And I'm going to use stamp tool. Well, actually, you know, let's try the new remove tool for that. Yes, yes. Oh, right, because the image is transparent. All right, let's go back to the retouch layer. Photoshop was yelling at me because I was trying to use remove tool on a blank empty layer. That happens. So you see what I mean? Like remove tool sometimes takes a while. So like it really depends on the task, which tools I use. Sometimes I feel like easier and faster just, you know, to grab clone stamp tool and just go boom like that. But the new remove tool is amazing. If you haven't tried it, I strongly recommend. It's just like this thing here. If I use the clone stamp tool, you have to, like, you know, boost up the hardness and go really closely and carefully not to clone anything like on her dress. But if I use remove tool, it's like it does everything for me. I don't have to worry about the edges between the dress and the background. It just goes boom, there you go. What?
Did you paint your background or did you?
No, it was like that already in the studio. That's why I liked it, yeah. So I'm going to remove this flyaway hair like completely. I think it's weird. And again, forgive me if there's anything sloppy. Because we have limited time today, I'm just trying to show you the basic idea what I did here. All right, here's a little bit more. I don't like this weird black thing sticking out of her head, so I'm going to remove it completely. And let's see how it goes with the remove tool. Yeah, almost, almost. That's okay, we can just brush over again. And see how what it did with the edges of the hair? It almost like recreated some of the flyaway hairs. That's amazing. Like, it's been like, what, 6 months it was introduced? I'm still in shock. Yes?
You have on the side there. Can you remove one of those without removing everything afterwards?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
You have a whole list of items on the right.
Yes, the history, yes.
Yes. And so can you take one out of the middle without removing the rest of the future steps, the following steps?
No, I don't think so. Why would you want to do that?
If you said, oh, I want that piece of hair back and 10 steps back.
You can, well, first of all, you can go back in history, right? But then you can also create a snapshot like this, and then you can go back to it like that. So it's like stays saved over there. So because history states they eventually like disappear step by step, right? But if you create a snapshot, it stays up there the whole time. Also, what you can do is you can click on this little square next to the history state, which says set the source for history brush. And then what happens, let's do like this one. If you continue doing, see how it like stays on top without disappearing. So there's like few ways of doing that. I hope I answered the question. Anyway, so I think I've removed all the flyaways here, but I feel like let's merge this, Control E to merge this layer to the retouch layer. And I'm going to create a new one. I feel like it's now too flat because, you know, hair can be like lined flat on top. But I still don't want it to be messy. But in this case, what I would do, I would paint new ones by hand. So I make my brush tool very, very small, 0% hardness, size like maybe not 2 pixels, but like 3, 5 pixels. And then I hit Alt key for the eyedropper and select color of her hair like that. And I just paint like that. Just give her few flyaway hairs. Same thing here. I hit Alt for the color. And few hairs, like that. Okay? Before and after. Okay, let's move on. Let's name this hair. I feel like her hairband is a little bit too small, like, you know, disappears in the hairstyle. I want it a little bit bigger, but if I use, for example, liquify filter, it's going to stretch the pixels way too much, and it's going to be, you know, visible that it's been stretched. So for that, I'm just going to use another photo from this set. This one, where she, like, you know, tilted her head a little bit, and you can see the bun a little bit more. So I'm going to open it in Photoshop, take my marquee tool, select just this piece right here because I don't need the whole thing. I don't need the whole image. Again, for saving space, file size, and computer resources, I'm just going to take my move tool and drag it and drop it onto my file. And this one I can close. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to reduce the opacity of the layer to be able to see what's happening underneath it. To see both layers. Control T for free transformation and rotate it slightly and maybe scale it down slightly. And I can also now see where I should position this newly created bun, hair bun. Click OK, go back to 0% opacity. Apply mask, take brush, black color, because black color hides the mask. 100% opacity, make sure that it's soft, and just roughly mask around this hair bun. Let me zoom in. Like that. And what I usually like to do, and like just friendly like recommendation, always double check your mask, because you can miss a few spots, and then like if you zoom in really closely, you can see like the edges of the mask of the layer that hasn't been masked. So I hold Alt or Option on Mac and click on the mask to get the mask view, and just make sure that I didn't miss like anything like over there. See, like over there was like a missed white spot over there. And Alt click to go back to the normal view. Okay, just tweak it a little bit more. And here you see I kind of like cut out the hair, so it looks cut out on this side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this layer that I've created with painted hair. I'm going to move it on top, this hairband, so I can paint on top, and do the same thing. I'm going to create like a couple of flyaway hairs like that. Okay. I feel like I want to reshape the bun a little bit, so I'm going back to this layer, Control T for free transformation, but this time I'm going to do right click for warp. And here in the tool menu, I'm going to select grade 4x4 for a more precise editing. And just slightly make it more kind of like round shape, like that. Okay. Here's before and after. I think it looks better this way. And okay, that's it. I think I'm done with retouching, with like shaping and everything, and now it's time to do some compositing. So the first thing that I would like to do, I feel like right here we have like a very, do you see my cursor? No, not really. Let me grab something, move to, there you go. Like I feel like right here, this spot is way too empty and like feels unbalanced to me, like the composition wise. I want like a paint splatter over there. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to save my image, Control-Shift-S, and I'm going to save it in PSD to keep all my editing layers and everything in this file. I'm going to click Save. I'm going to take a few moments, and I'm going to go back to that JPEG image that I've exported. Because I really like this splitter. I want to take it from this image and put it onto my file. You can, of course, take the crop tool and expand the frame and then take the piece. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just I feel like for me this is more convenient. So I just select this splitter right there, move tool, drag it and drop it somewhere here. Let me move this newly created layer on top of everything because I like my files to be structured, like going from liquify, retouch, hair, and then splatter, like next step. I'm going to rotate it slightly. I don't want it to be like too straight, like this. And now instead of masking, I'm going to change its blending mode to darken. And in darken mode, everything that is darker than the background stays visible, and everything that is lighter than the background, invisible, like disappears. So in this case, the splatter is much darker than the white background, and the background around the splatter, right, in this layer, it should be lighter and it should disappear. And for that, because right now it's like darker, I'm going to apply curves. Control-M for curves. I'm just going to pull up the RGB. You see how like the background disappears? So I move it all the way up until it disappears almost entirely. And I can also fix the color a little bit by going to red channel and pulling it slightly down, like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe red channel a little bit, like something like that, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect because I can just take the eraser tool and just roughly erase everything around it, and I don't have to worry about like it being a specific mask or anything.
So that was Control-M?
Control-M for curves. But you can also go to image mode, adjustments, curves, and there you go, Control-M or Command-M.
It only does that layer instead of
Yes, and it only applies to the layer you're currently on. And I'm going to talk about adjustment layers a little bit like in 5 minutes. Okay, there you go. So now it's time to composite the paint tube because right now, it's not finished. I wasn't able to actually build the screw part of the paint tube like I tried, but it didn't work out well. So I'm just going to use a stock image for that. And it's very important to choose the right stock image because you need to make sure that it's like correct lighting, correct light direction, and correct quality of light. Like, is it soft or harsh? Like the temperature, is it like a daylight or maybe like evening light, things like that. So for the top part of the paint tube, I chose this stock image, and I think it's perfect because it has similar lighting, and if I rotate it, like the light direction goes exactly the same way because on this image, the light goes from right to left, right? So the window was right there. So it goes like this direction. So again, I'm just going to drag and drop it, open it in Photoshop. And again, I don't need the whole thing. I just need the top part like this, selecting and putting it onto my image. Let me close this. It's a little bit smaller, but that's okay. Just reduce my opacity to be able to see both layer and what's happening underneath it. And Control-T for free transformation. I'm going to rotate it and scale it up. Oops. like that. Bring the opacity back to 100, apply mask. And now again, you have many different options how to select this thing, how to mask it. You can use any of the selection tools like quick selection. You can use pan tool. And usually when I need a precise mask like that, I usually go for a pan tool because it's way more precise and gives me much more control instead of like quick selection tool. But you can also do that. And let me quickly select this image. I mean, not the image, the top part. So I just tap on the image to create anchor point, and without releasing, I drag it to create a curve, like that. The paint part I don't need, like this red thing, so I'm just going to loosely mask it like that around because I'm going to use another stock image for the tip of the paint. So I click and drag to create the anchor point and the curve. You can see the handles of the curve. You can also adjust them if you need to. And then in the end, when I'm done, I just click on the first anchor point to close my path. And then now I can adjust and tweak this path a little bit by holding Control key, clicking on the anchor point, and moving the curve if I need to. Okay, I think it's good. I think it looks good. So now I right click on the mouse for the pop-up menu and I choose Make Selection. Here, New Selection, and I usually like to feather it a little bit somewhere around 1.8 up to 1 pixel radius to give it a little bit of feather. Okay, now the selection was created based on my path, and now I can mask it. Right now, if I take my brush and start painting, let me increase the size, it's going to paint inside of my selection, but I need the opposite of that. I need to mask outside of my selection. So Control Z to go back, and I hit Control Shift I to inverse my selection. And I can either paint or just go Alt backspace to fill everything with black color. Control D to deselect, and now I can see that I need to move this thing a little bit more and probably scale it down a little. It's a little too big. Okay, let me go back. I want to undo the free transform thing. So I can see that I have this thing sticking out in the background. So I'm going to remove it so it's not like messing up with my composite. I'm going back to Retouch layer and just take Clone Stamp tool and just remove it like that. So it's not in a way. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my tube layer, turn it on, and I still think it's slightly big, just a little bit. This thing is weird right there. I don't like it. I'm going to go back to Retouch layer and try and remove it with the remove tool.
While she's doing that, if you're watching online, you can hit like. You know, she feeds her family on likes. She needs those likes. And hit subscribe, because I guarantee you're probably not subscribed. So there's a new channel, so hit subscribe.
Every time you hit like, there's a happy puppy out there.
Oh, wow. That's good. Okay.
Or a kitten, whatever, you're a cat person or a dog person. All right. The compositing part, the masking part is done. Looks great. Now we need to fix the color, obviously, because it doesn't match. And to do that, I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer. So like you asked before, adjustment layer is applied on top of everything and applies to the whole image, what's like underneath this adjustment. So adjustment layers are here, this little icon, and I select curves. So now if I do any adjustments, it's applied to the whole image, everything that is beneath this curves layer. But in this case, I want my curves adjustment to be only applied to this paint tube layer, right? Because, you know, of course I could click on a layer, go to image, adjustments, and do whatever I want. But then my editing is destructive because I cannot go back if I change my mind. If I save my file, I close it, I come back to this image later, like days, weeks after, I can undo that. But adjustment layer allows us to keep this adjustment as a separate layer and be able to tweak it, change it, delete it, turn it off, do anything we want. So to be able to apply this adjustment only to a specific layer, you need to clip it. You need to create a clipping mask. And it's very easy to do that. You either click on the curve for properties and click on this icon right here, or hold Alt key and move this cursor between the layers you want to clip together. And you see this little icon appears, and you click, and now it's clipped. So now curves layer is clipped to my tube. So if I do any adjustment, you see how it only affects the tube, all right? And now for the adjustments. And I always like to keep my contrast and exposure layer separate from the color editing, if that makes sense. Here I'm going to reduce the contrast a little bit because I feel like this highlight is way too bright for this image. So I'm going to keep the middle tones in place and only pull down the whites like that. And I'm going to fix the color. And for that, I'm going to create another curve adjustment because, again, contrast and color separately. Clip it, go to red channel, pull it down because opposite to red is cyan, and I want more cyan. And go to blue and pull it slightly up for more blue. All right, I think looks good now, right? The color-wise. And now I feel like I need to create a shadow because, you know, light goes from this direction, and there should be like a slight shadow casted from the screw top. So I'm going to create curves, again, clip it, pull the RGB down. But now I need only this curve adjustment to be like only right here, not the whole thing, right? So to do that, I'm going to Control-I, invert the mask. So now it's black, you can't see anything. I think I pulled it way too much. And I'm going to take white brush, white color, make sure that it's soft, and just tap it right here. That's it. Okay. So let's see. So I did some contrast changes, color, and a shadow. And they all only attach to layer 3. Let's name it. Let's name it a tube top. Okay. Oh, you see, oh, I laugh at this. A tube top, like clothing. All right. So yeah, here's our tube top. Okay, now we need to edit the paint tip, right? And for that, I have another image. I have this one. I really like this like blue, like sticking out a little bit. So again, same thing, open in Photoshop, marquee tool selected, bring it here, opacity down, scale it down because it's too big. right, I think okay. Bring back the opacity, and again, apply mask. This time, let's try quick selection tool. So here it is, quick selection tool. Oops, no, not this one, quick selection tool. And just select this piece of paint. Go away. I can pin it, right? Yes, I can pin it, yes. I think it's pretty good. I can make sure that it's like has smooth edges by going to select and mask. And here I can smooth the line. I can feather it slightly. Maybe boost up the contrast. Maybe a little more. Okay, I think looks good. Okay. And same thing, now it's like my selection is inside of it. I need to mask outside of the selection. So I'm going to invert the mask and fill it with color. And fix this part right here. Black color. By the way, to switch between colors here in the menu, black and white, back and forth is X, like that. It's very convenient when you mask and you need to switch back and forth like that. Where's my pen tablet? There you go. Okay. Oops. I feel like this tip is a little bit like going upwards, but because of the gravity, it should go down, like slide down a little bit. So that's why I'm just going to do this. Just that. Okay. And okay, again, obviously we need to fix the contrast and color. And I'm going to repeat the same steps. I'm going to create an adjustment layer, which is curves. I'm going to clip it. Let me pull this window so you can see better, like that. So first, I have my cheat sheets here, sorry guys. Let's do the color first. Go to red channel, pull it down, maybe pull the white point of the red channel down to kind of like give more effect on the highlights rather than the shadows, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think pretty close. And again, because I like to keep contrast and color separately, I create another curves. Clip it, and I'm just going to pull up the black point and pull down the white point to reduce the contrast. Like that. And now I just need to fix the color of the paint, because I want this paint to match the paint of the color of this tube tag and the paint on her arms and brush. And to do that, I'm going to create hue saturation adjustment. Again, clip it, go to blue color here in the menu with colors, and just change its hue until I feel like it matches. Something like this. I feel like it's a little bit too vibrant, so I'm going back to, well, actually I can stay in blue color and just reduce the saturation slightly. Okay. All right, I think looks good. Let's do the question.
Kevin is asking, is a tablet necessary to do these edits?
No, of course, tablet is not necessary. You can do however you feel comfortable. It's just, I feel like it gives you so much more control, because pen tablet allows you to do like pen pressure and strokes and different like, so sometimes I don't even change the size of a brush because I have this pressure. If I push harder on the tablet, it's like the brush is bigger, and if I slightly touch it, it's like a thin line, and I just can create all these like shapes and line, and it's just, I don't know, for me it's like right now I cannot edit without it. I cannot imagine how to do that. So yesterday I was preparing for this session and I packed my tablet in a bag and I didn't want it to reconnect it. So I was trying to, you know, repeat these steps with my mouse and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do this. But yeah, I know people who do this with a trackpad. I don't know how they do that. It's just, I guess it's a question of convenience, but I don't know, I recommend giving it a try because a lot of things you cannot do that without it. For example, like painting hairs. You can't do that without a pen tablet.
I think it's better depending on your workflow situation. You know, like you're going to do stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. In my mouse.
Yeah. I switch between mouse and tablet all the time, but some tasks I feel like is just like necessary. But I mean, you can obviously probably do it without it. All right. The next step, what I would like to do, I feel like some of the splatters are way too gray, brown color. For example, this one is blue and it matches the paint tube perfectly. So I want all of them to match my paint tube and be all blue. And to do that, I'm going to select them. And to select them, I'm going to click on any pixel layer, for example, Retouch, and go to Select, Color, Range. And I'm going to take the eyedropper and click on the splatter.
Got a quick question.
Yep.
Kenny's asking, is there any reason why you didn't just use replace color from red to blue?
I'm not used to, I've never used color replace. I don't know. I feel like hue saturation gives me more control. And it's just I've been doing this for so many years. I'm sure you can probably do it with replace color, but it's just like, I don't know.
And
I feel like hue saturation gives more control because you have all these colors and you can like do like the rainbow slider and make them like wider range and narrower range of the color and be more precise. And then you have like hue saturation lightness, which I think also exists in color replace. But anyway.
And really quick, they just want to know which tablet that is you're using.
Oh, okay. I'm using Wacom Intuos Pro medium size without screen. All right, so I've selected the splatter, but obviously I need more of it. So I take the eyedropper with plus sign, and I just add more to the selection. And it's okay if like part of the tube gets selected. Oops. And let me increase the fuzziness. Oh, I think it's good, so I click OK. Now I have the selection of a specific color. And I'm going to create a hue saturation. Oops. And here in hue saturation, I'm going to choose colorize. And colorize allows you to tone an image or part of an image to a specific color, one specific color. So if I turn off the mask, for example, shift click, you can see how it toned the whole image in one specific color. And here I select a color of the paint. Like cyan blue, like that. Decrease the saturation slightly. Okay, but now I need to remove this effect from the model. From the model and the paint tube, you see how like it's weird there. I don't want it there on the tube. So I alt click on the mask and you see how it selected part of the hair even and the tube. I don't need it, so I just take black brush and remove the effect from the subject, leaving it only on the splatters around in the background. And I'll click back to the mask. And let's see the before and after. Maybe boost up the saturation. You see why I'm using adjustment colors because, oh, I changed my mind. I want more saturation. So I double click on the adjustment and it just tweak it however I want. Or maybe I change my mind and I want it, green or whatever. I'm sorry? Yes, to see the mask, Alt or Option on Mac, click on the mask to see the mask. And go back to the image, again, Alt click. And Shift click is to turn it off. All right. Oh, I remembered. Somebody asked me if I'm going to remove this line on her face, and I totally forgot about it. That's okay. That's why we have non-destructive editing, and I can go back all the way to the beginning and just quickly show you how I would do that. So to remove this line on her cheek, and she has a little bit of eye circle underneath, I would do it with dodge and burning. And I do dodge and burning with the gray layer, the technique. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So I create a new layer by hitting Control-Shift-N for a pop-up menu of the new layer. And here I'm going to put it into soft light blending mode. And when I put it into soft light blending mode, it gives me the opportunity to check the fill with soft light neutral gray color 50% gray. So I click on that and I click OK. And now you can see in the layer panel, I have this gray layer, which is in soft light mode, is transparent, it's invisible. But you can do things on top of it. You can paint, you can use dodge and burn tools, or just brush tools. And I prefer using brush tools. So for example, if I choose 100% opacity, black or white, it kind of works as dodge and burn tool. But you have it on top as kind of an adjustment. So you don't actually burn the pixel layer, if it makes sense. And I would just reduce the hardness, opacity, 5%. And just lighten this thing. You would probably ask me why I don't just use, clone stamp or healing brush. And I feel like those tools are great, but sometimes they mess up with the skin texture. And I don't like that. So all I need to do is just lighten this part right there, and it's good to go. It doesn't need that actual removing. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time because it can take me forever. I really love doing this. But just to give you an idea. And you can also tweak makeup with this thing. You can darken, eyes and give more contouring to the face if you want. So for example, I can go increase the opacity a little bit and go at the outer corner of her eyes to give a little bit shadow, eyeshadow. And let's see the before and after. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much done. I mean, I would probably do another curvy adjustment on top of everything, pull it down, Control-I to invert the mask. Let's bring opacity back to 100%, and just do a light accent, like that, to get more attention to the subject. Kind of soft vignette, but not on this side because light comes from the right side of the image. Like that. And what else I like to do, sometimes I like to apply channel mixer to kind of change the tonal contrast of the image, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Here in the presets, I like to play with different presets. Just scroll through them and see which one I like. And I feel like infrared looks really nice on this image. And now I'm going to put it into luminosity mode. Obviously, that's way too much, so I'm just going to reduce the opacity something to 30, 40%. And this is what it does. Yep.
Lightheaded is asking, do you always work off a laptop monitor? Do you have one that might match color better?
Well, actually, I have a desktop computer at home, and I have a BenQ monitor that I work on, and another separate monitor. So laptop, mostly for traveling, but even before I got my desktop computer, I was actually working from laptop, but I also had a separate monitor. So I only work from laptop monitor when I travel or when I do like presentations. But at home I have a nice monitor that is like calibrated and everything. All right, I think I'm done. Let's see the before and after. Let me save this file just in case. It's always a good idea to always save in the middle of the process. Just hit Control S, sorry. And to see the whole before and after, instead of like, turning off all these layers, I just hold Alt key and I click on the very first eye icon of the base layer, layer 0, the one that I kept as an original image and I didn't do any changes to it. So Alt, click, and here's the before and after.
Do you sell these prints?
Yes, I do. All right, that's it. Any questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to ask any question. Yes?
I missed the beginning. How did you get that big paint?
It already existed. It's in the studio.
Oh, really?
Yes, I booked the studio because I really like this background, and it got me like this creative thinking of how I can use this background, and that's how I came up with the idea that maybe she's painting this background. That's why she's holding this giant paint tube and brush, and she's also like covered with paint. And
They had the paint tube there?
no, I made it from out of paper, craft paper. I made it out of craft paper. It's just paper, so you can easily like squish it. But then I spray painted it with silver paint on top, and I just took regular color paper, like craft paper, and just glued this tag on top. Yeah, I tried doing it from foil, but that looked weird. Like the foil was way too reflective and way too wrinkly. So then I thought, oh, maybe I can just spray brown craft paper, and it worked. Yep. So yeah, I can show you the raw file. There's the raw file. Yeah. So this is the final image. Yeah.
I wanted to know your creative process. Before anything, I want to say that this is like handcraft photography. I love this, and
Thank you.
I admire this so much because you have to have like so much criteria to like get something really beautiful. I tried to do this, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And I want to know like what's your creative process, and like it's an idea and then you go, I don't know, to Pinterest and see references, or how do you like go through all this?
Well, there's no formula. Like I don't have like one just way of doing things. But yeah, I very often I go to Pinterest for inspiration. I love Pinterest. There's so many cool ideas that you can like pull from different artists. Sometimes I love to travel. I love nature, so that inspires me a lot when I travel to like cool different places. I always do research online, and if I see something unique and beautiful, I'm like, I have to create an artwork there, and that's like takes like a bulk of my portfolio. I can pull up it quickly and show you what I mean on my website.
Do you draw sometimes?
Sometimes I do like sketches, yes, but not. Oops, I don't have internet. Sorry. That ended up quickly. I can probably connect. But yeah, I have so like when I.
Sorry. Oh wait, did I ever give you internet like a million years ago? No.
No. Yes. Yay. So if I pull up my website, which is anya-anti.com, feel free to check in. So yeah, for example, so this one we traveled to, so I don't really travel purposely to shoot. It's usually like I'm on vacation with my husband or something. So this was taken in Copenhagen. They have this famous street, I forgot the name, Newhaven something, Newhaven. So it's like this famous street in Copenhagen with all these colorful houses. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm like starting brainstorming, what can I do? And I started, Pinterest, yeah. And I got this idea of me being a house myself, and I created this rooftop out of just shipping boxes. Like shipping boxes is my main prop. I cut it, I glue it, I paint it. Yes. Or like this one I shot in Iceland. It's a very famous tourist attraction, the plane wreckage. Everybody takes picture there. So yeah, we went there on vacation on the trip, and I was like, wow, this is so cool, how I can use it in my artwork. So I got this idea. This is like an old dead plane behind me, and I'm in the pilot outfit, and I'm holding this paper plane in me, kind of like symbolizing hope or rebirth or something like that. And it was funny because I remember that day we went there, and there was like decent amount of tourists taking pictures there, you know, like landscape photography with tripods and everything. And then there's me pulling up goggles and like leather jacket and pulling out this paper plane, and everybody, so I asked my husband to help me take this picture, so he's taking my picture, and all the tourists lining up behind them. He started taking pictures of me as well. So yeah, I made a show there.
You got a question in the chat.
Yes.
Basically asking you, have you tried or will you be incorporating AI into your future work?
I started playing with Photoshop generated fill. I've already used it in my work. But like tiny things. For example, recently I've released this work with a deer, girl dressed, probably, but anyway. So there's like this recent photo shoot I've released online that like she's like wearing deer antlers and she's wearing a wig. Actually, let me quickly pull it up. There's my social media. There's my Instagram. And she was wearing a wig. She was wearing a wig. There it is. Ah! Come on. No. Oh, there. Can I log in? Oh, come on. I'm taking security very seriously. Anyway, there's this picture. And I always edit the hairline to make it as realistic as possible. But this time I decided to use Photoshop's generative fill. So I just selected it with lasso tool and I typed in like natural hairline, and boom, it got me the natural hairline. It was really cool. I also have this post, if you go to my Instagram, this one, where I'm trying generative fill. So this is like an old artwork of mine. I actually can't find it on my website. Yeah, there it is. So it used to look like this. And I've never been a really big fan of it. I felt like, yeah, the moon is cool, but like the background and the surrounding is just like this Photoshop stock image of stars. I don't know. I never really liked it. So I decided to try the generative fill instead. Do I have it on top? No, I should update my website. Anyway, I have this image where I try to generate these like clouds and backgrounds, and I have a little video as a reel of this process. You can check it out. So yeah, I have a strong opinion about AI, but mostly about generating images from scratch. But the generative fill in Photoshop, I think, is pretty cool because this is exactly how a tool is supposed to work. More of an extension to my workflow rather than replacing me completely. And it doesn't replace me completely. It only speeds up some parts of it. And it's not like I'm generating the whole thing, right? I'm just doing little parts that I feel like would take me so much time to do it, by hand. And it's funny because my whole career, I've been doing photography for almost 15 years now. My whole career, I had to defend myself that my work is photography and it's not all photoshopped. But now I have to prove people that it's not AI. And it's it's never ending battle, I guess. Yes?
Back to the one you were working on for a second.
This one?
Yes. Could you make the black bluer on the paintbrushes in the back?
I'm sorry, to do what?
I guess you could adjust those curves again to make the black markings on the background.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can, sure, you go, let's say, okay, I save it, I close it, right? sometime like a week after I go back to it, right? I pull up my PSD file. I open it in Photoshop. I don't have any more of my history states anymore, right? I can't go back. I don't have my snapshot, anything, but I have my layers. So I go back to my layer, which is this one, and I just double click on it, and I can, maybe boost up the saturation, or I can, create a curves adjustment and take this mask by holding Alt key and dragging it onto this layer, and it asks me, do you want to replace the mask? Yes, and you can see how it created, like, duplicated the mask. And now I can, based on this mask, I can, make them maybe lighter, add some blue. The mask looks a little bit weird, but I can go to filter, blur, and, feather it a little bit more, like this. But yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Question in the chat: do you ever have creative block, and how do you overcome it?
Oh yeah, constantly. Yeah, it's been a while actually since I've shot something last time. So, how do you overcome it? I try to think of what inspires me, and I go for it. For example, like I said, I love traveling, and I love nature, and I love unique places, something like this. So in a few days, we're going to Miami for a couple of days, just to get some warmth during the winter in New York. So I think I might take this opportunity and photograph something, because the sunset are usually pretty over there. So I might create something over there. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard, I know. Or maybe try, and I find myself that collaborating also helps. Like if you find a creative person that you want to work with, either like a stylist or a model or whatever, it also like boosts the creativity, because the moment we set the date, schedule, like I know I have to go out and shoot, I start, like researching, finding references and brainstorming, or what can I do? That also helps. We're good? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope it was fun.